Hello, John Talley here with Boats.net, and in this video we are going to do a complete build of a 2004 Yamaha F225. We took this engine all the way down to the crankshaft and then built it all the way back up. Now if you just want to watch individual sections, we have those broken out in separate videos. But if you're really interested, tune in and you'll see what it took to get this motor back to where it is right now. So if you're ready, we'll dive into this. Before you is a new block assembly, all the pistons and rings, gaskets and bearings that were going to be required to put this together. Now I've already gone through the process to determine which bearing sizes should fit inside this engine, but I need to walk you through that so you understand how to do that on your own. Now this is going to be a long day. Before I get this thing split in half, let's look at the special tools we're going to need to get it done. So let's go. As always, a good torque wrench. Second, you're going to need to have a ring compressor. Now you can use the standard universal type like this, but the one I'm going to be using is one from Wiseco, and it's actually a ring sleeve. You drop the piston in, straight into the bores. Third, you need to have a set of ring pliers. Pick those up just about anywhere. Now I know that was a daunting table, all those parts, but now that you've got it together, and then we have our special tools, let's go over there and build this engine. So we've got it broken in half, and now I need to walk you through where to get the information off of both the block and the crank so we can determine which bearing size is going to be required. Now that's kind of hard to see, but what we're looking for are 4 numbers that are going along the bottom web of the engine block itself. And this is going to be journal 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the numbers that are actually right side up for me are going to be upside down for you looking from that angle. This is going to be 14, that's a 10, 10, and a 15. So write those down. Now next, we want to get 2 sets of numbers off of our crankshaft. We're going to get the main journals, which are the same 4 that correspond to this. But while we're there, we want to go ahead and get the actual connector rod locations. There'll be 6 numbers for those. So look on the end of the crank, the 4 numbers up top are for the journals. So that's going to be 73, 75, 75, and then 73. And while we're down here, let's go ahead and get our connector rod. So that's going to be 87, 86, 87, 88, 87, and 90. I guarantee you, your number is going to be a little bit different from mine, but that's okay because each block, each crankshaft, each connector rod, there's just a little bit of variance, and we go through this process to get it as accurately sized as possible. So now that we've got our numbers, let's go look in the chart that we're going to show you, and that'll determine which bearing needs to go in which location. Now the chart we're showing you now is where you input your numbers. The top's going to be your cylinder block number, and on the other axis is going to be your crankshaft journal mark. When you input those 2 numbers, they're going to intersect out in the chart, and that is going to tell you what size bearing that we're going to need. So let's do journal number 1. First number is 73, and on the block side, 14. We follow 73 across, we bring 14 down. That is going to be a bearing 3. You go through the same process for journal 2, 3, and 4. Each one of them is going to get you a number inside of this chart, which is going to correspond to a certain size bearing. Now keep in mind, when you get to journal 3, that is different than journal 1, 2, and 4 because that is your thrust bearing. So make sure you take that into account when you're making your order. Now, doing the same procedures for journals 2, 3, and 4, mine's going to be 3, 2, 2, 3. Now that I've shown you how to get the bearing size, let me go grab those, get them put in. We'll lay in our crankshaft, a little bit of plastic gauge, get this thing bolted down and check to see if we're right. And there's number 4. All right, the bearings are in place. Now I just want to grab the thrust washers. I'm going to put a little bit of grease toward the inside to where they're kind of stick to the casing itself. Let's lay in our crank carefully. All right, resist the temptation to roll this because there's no assembly lube, there's no oil, there's nothing, and we don't want to mar the surfaces. So we'll leave it where it is. There, now we'll step over to the other table, get those bearings in place, then we can pop her in. That should do it. And the last. Now let's clean those surfaces off, and we're going to lay in 4 strips of plastic gauge. And we're using the green, and that'll get us in the correct range. Looks like she's sitting down. Let's get some torque on there. And when you're putting these in, make sure you oil the threads on each one. And no, I'm not using this to torque it down. I'm just using this to run it down, so we're not here forever. Just run it till the bottom's out. Then we'll break out the torque wrench. One small mistake, when I flipped the engine around from where we first started, made a mistake where these 2 bolts go. Otherwise, your windage tray will not go in there correctly. So let me swap those around, then we'll get going. So the tightening sequence is as follows. Bolts 1 through 8. Your first is going to be 18 foot-pounds, and your second is going to be plus 90 degrees. For 9 through 16, we're going to take that to 29 foot-pounds, and then add an additional 90 degrees. Now for the perimeter bolts, all the M8 bolts, we're going to take it to 10 foot-pounds, and then the second is going to be 20 foot-pounds. 18 foot-pounds, let's get going. Let's find number 1. Now we're going to ramp it up to 29 foot-pounds. So we left off at what, number 8? So we're going to number 9. Now let's drop it down to 10 foot-pounds and hit all the bolts on the perimeter. Now, we're going to go through the same sequence on these and add 90 degrees to both these outside bolts, the inside bolts, and then we'll take the outside perimeter bolts to 20 foot-pounds. So my particular torque wrench actually can do degrees. If not, either get one of these or get a degree wheel to where you can get where 90 degrees is as accurately as you can. There we go. Now let's change our units back to foot-pounds, bring it up to 20, and then finish out. All right, that's it. Reverse order. All right, to break these loose, I'm going to use a wrench to at least get it started. So we left off on 17, so over to 16. Now let's get them out. They're already loosened, so sequence really doesn't matter at this point. All right, there's a couple of pry points on either side. We want to lift up on this very carefully as to not to get anything to rotate to get it to break loose. There's no sealant on it, so this shouldn't be any more than just getting it off the dowels. What we're looking for is anywhere from 0.025 to 0.050. And on our scale, there's your 0.25, and then there's your 0.051. So anywhere in between, that one being the smallest and that one being the largest. This is a tick on the tight side, but that's okay because it'll actually wear in and put us exactly where we need to be. What we're going to do next is pull out the crank, then I'm going to flip over the bottom half of the crankcase itself and get all the plastic gauge cleaned off. At that point, we're going to break out our assembly lube and actually put this crankshaft together. So let's get going. Right, we're getting ready to lay the crankshaft in. Before I do that, I want to put a little bit of oil around the main seal here. Then I'm going to put it on the end of the crankshaft, and then I'm going to bring it over and lay it in place. Let's go ahead and get some assembly lube on our bearings. I like to put it on both sides, actually. What's going to be down in here, and then we'll put some on the journals once we lay the crank in. Put a tick on our thrust bearing. Now we've got our main seal on, and it's got oil on it. Let's lay in the crank for the last time. Make sure you don't knock off the thrust bearings as you're guiding it in. That should do. Now with that in place, let's go ahead and lay down our sealant. It does not take a lot, just a thin layer. A thin continuous layer. Make sure you put a little bit here on the edge on either side of the seal, and just on this side, this one protrusion where the bearing is kicked into the block, put just a dot right there, not into where the oil is going to be, but just where that cutout is on this side. Actually, I made one small mistake on the other side. It should cut in between those two right here. So trick is not to put too much because we don't want to have a bunch of it squirting inside and then trying to mix with our oil. I mean, that's not what we're after. Let's go and get our O-rings in place. I'm going to carry the lube over to the back half, go ahead and put it on the bearings, and then we're going to set it down. Well, that looks good to me. Let's get some bolts back in place. Once again, don't forget to oil the threads. This is going to be the exact same procedure when we torqued it down last time. "18 foot-pounds, 1 through 8, coming up. 9 through 16 going up to 29 foot-pounds. Now, the perimeter ones, we're going to drop down to 10 foot-pounds. Now, 1 through 8, actually 1 through 16 is going to be plus 90 degrees. Now we'll switch over to foot-pounds again and go to 20 with the perimeter. There it is. Before we move it over to the engine stand, what we're going to do is go ahead and put the oil pump on. That way I don't have to worry about trying to do that when we're actually lifting the entire unit off when it's completely finished, just getting this one piece on. It won't interfere with the engine stand that I'm using, so we're going to go ahead and pop it on now. So what we have are the 2 O-rings, seal here, and then an output seal. Make sure you grease all of these accordingly, and then we're just going to bolt it back up. Oh, don't forget that guy. The trick here is to line up that with the end of the crankshaft and the housing at the same time. You may have to move it a few times before everybody wants to play nice. There we go. Get our 4 bolts in there. Then we'll get the stand adapter mounted to it and then get it over to the stand. Then we'll be able to start working on the pistons and connector rods. We're going to put 7 foot-pounds on those. Well, I guess when you can make it exact. There we go. Now we can turn our attention to the pistons, rings, and connector rods. To give you an overview of what's going to happen, what I'm going to do is go ahead and mount the piston to the connector rod. At that point, I'm going to explain how we chose the correct bearing sizes. We're actually going to install it into the block with plastic gauge to take a measurement to make sure it's within range. Now when you're doing this, do not use your new connector rod bolts. We want to reuse the ones that came out because they're one-time usage. Let's start by getting our ring out. As long as it didn't fly in the engine, I think we're okay. Now take note of which way the connector rod is oriented with the piston. The piston side is up and you have markings on the inner part of the web on it. We want to make sure that the new piston gets installed the same way. Push that to the side. Let's go ahead and put in 1/2 of our circlips. We want to make sure that it is either facing straight down or straight up. You do not want the end of it to end up in that little cutout to the side. So let's rotate it back a little bit and start working it in. What I'm doing is using the screwdriver just to push barely on its edge as I'm pushing in with my other thumb to get it to ride down in there. There she goes. As long as you only scar up the outside, we're good. What you don't want to do is scar up the inside where the wrist pin's going to ride. Before we put in the wrist pin, let's go ahead and put a little assembly lube inside the connector rod and inside the piston. All right, we've got that in the up orientation. There she goes. Now we just need to get the other circlip in on the other side. Piece of cake. Now it's important now that you wrote down those 6 numbers that were actually marked on the inside of the crankshaft, because this is where they come into play. Now those numbers will tell you which size bearing or which color bearing that you should be using, and it's only determined by the crank. In most cases, usually it's a combination of the crank versus connector rod, but with Yamaha, it's only with the crank size. So now those numbers, you actually look into this table and it's going to tell you which color. In my case, they all fall into the green category. So all of my bearings are going to be the green ones. So what we're going to do now is take our new bearings, put a little bit of plastic gauge on them, and then we're going to install the piston and the connector rod into the block without the rings where we can take the measurement. Now when you're putting in the bearings, make sure that these 2 little indentions are on the same side. All right, that's in place. Let's step over to the block and get this installed. Now I'm going to take a little bit of oil and just put it on the skirts so I don't scratch up anything in there. Facing up. And let's bring our journal down to the bottom of the stroke. All right. Now when you're doing this, make sure that you're not lining it up with the old alleyway. I've got a smooth surface, so I'm good to go. Now we just need to get it torqued down, and this is actually a 3-step process. The first time we take it to 17 foot-pounds, then we put it to 35 foot-pounds, and the last is to take it an additional 90 degrees. So we're going to start at 17. Now the real trick here is to not let the crankshaft turn, because if it rotates, then that's going to smear the plastic gauge and we're not going to have a good reading. So be careful here. And then up to 35. And now 90 degrees. All right, let it calibrate, figure out where it is. We're at 90. Let's go. There it is. Now, let's take it back out and see what it measured out at. Let's see what we ended up with. So we're looking for in between 0.035 and 0.071, and we are right in there. So we are good to go. So now let's check our ring gap. We're going to start with the top ring. It is the one with an R mark on it, and that's going to be facing up on the piston. And we're going to install it into the block about 20 millimeters in. And we're looking for a range in between 0.15 and 0.3 millimeters. So we're going to place it in there. We're going to square it up using the piston, pushing it in from the top, and then take our measurement. So let's pop her in carefully. And then we're going to square it up with the piston. That should do 0.127. Let's see if she'll go. I'm betting it will. Yep. So we're already in the ballpark, so I'm good with that. That one does not need to be adjusted. Next, let's look at our second ring, and we're looking for clearance on it. It's a good bit larger. It's in between 0.15 and 0.35 millimeters. So let's take it up to 0.305. Yep, not a problem. So they're both in the ballpark. Last, we'll check our O-rings, and then we can move on. We'll pop the O-rings in there, but I go ahead and tell you they're going to be fine. I mean, that's plenty of gap, and I'm actually having to hold it into the cylinder walls. So we're good. So let's head back over to the table, get the rings mounted to the piston, and then we'll talk about the orientation of where they need to end up. So instead of running back and forth to the book, I usually just write onto the piston the orientation, everything needs to go in, and just mark it. Your top ring here, and you're also going to end up with your oil ring in that location. Then second ring goes 180 degrees away, about 45 degrees off axis. Second ring goes there. Then you're going to have your oil retaining rings. The oil top one is here, and then 180 out is where your oil bottom is going to go. So we're going to start with the oil ring, the first one. You want to have your edges facing up, and when you're putting these in, you want to make sure that they butt up to each other like this, because on occasion they'll try to leapfrog over one side or the other, and that won't work out very well. So you just want to make sure that they're butted together. So our oil ring is going to end up over here. Then we're going to take our oil bottom next, and that's going to end up on this side. And with these really thin rings, you can actually spiral these on. Now you do not want to use the spiraling technique with your second ring or the top ring, but for this, it's okay. All right, let's verify that the oil, they're still butted up to each other, and they are right there. Now we can take our oil top, and we want it to end up over here. There. Next, let's do our second ring, and that is the one that has the RN on it. Now before we install that, just take a little bit of oil on your fingertips and just wipe it around the surface of the ring. Now we only want to open it up just enough for it to clear the piston. Hop in there. Next, we'll get on our top, and it's going to end up over here. Same process with the oil. Make sure the R is facing up. There it is. Now, one thing we need to go back and do is take out our old connector rod bolts and then install the new ones. And we also need to clean up where the plastic gauge is on our bearing as well as on the crankshaft journal. Just take a little bit of assembly lube, go ahead and put it on the bearing surfaces. I want to coat down the cylinder walls. I'd cleaned them earlier. Just want to take a little bit of oil on my fingertips and just spread it around the inside of the cylinder. So just shoot a little bit of oil in here, and then we'll spread it around. Now there's a couple of different ways you can get the rings to compress down on the piston to get them into the block. There's the tried and true compressor. It's just an adjustable one. But the one I prefer to use is actually a sleeve ring compressor. You drop it in from the top, made it up to the block, and just guide it in. So I'm going to go with the sleeve type for this one. Let's get our orientation. It's going to be up. And these are actually tapered. So we want to start it like this. Make sure your rings guide in. Isn't that easy? Yep, get things lined up down here. Keep coming. Yep, I think she's bottomed out now. Yep. What I'm doing here is just making sure I've got the end cap going in correctly, because we've got a mark there and one there. So now, So let's get it torqued back down for the final time. 17 foot-pounds coming up. Then up to 35. And now 90 degrees. All right, guys, all we need to do now is go through that exact same process 5 more times. So let me get that knocked out and then we can finish up this part. All right, guys, that was a lot of fun, and you got to enjoy it through time lapse where I actually had to do the work. Now there's just a few more things to get it buttoned up. We want to go ahead and get the baffle plate or windage tray in place, and I loosely call this the oil pan. If it was a standard engine, sitting upright in a car, that's what it would be doing. Then we've got a couple of water lines that need to go in, and then there's an inspection plate that needs to go on this side, and then we will finish it out by putting on the drive gear for the cam timing. So let's start off with the windage tray, and these do need to have a little bit of Loctite on them, and then we're going to torque them. They call out 8.7 foot-pounds. We'll take it to 9, and I think everything will be fine. So let's start getting this thing wrapped up. Next, let's get on our new gasket for our crankcase cover. There is a sequence to this, and the good part about this is they actually have them numbered going around in the sequence. But it's actually a 2-stage. The first time around you take it to 10 foot-pounds. The second time around you take it to 20. So we've got everything just set in place. Now it's time to break out the torque wrench. We're going to follow the sequence, take it to 10 foot-pounds, come back, do the same sequence again at 20 foot-pounds. All right, let's take it up to 20. Next, let's get on our oil filter housing. We'll take these to 8. Let's go ahead and get our oil filler neck reinstalled. use the same torque. Now, if you were paying attention when I took apart the original block, you will remember that these were an absolute mess. I'm not going to go through this much pain and put really dilapidated parts back on it. So this one's getting new hoses, new housings, new thermostats. Just about all of your 6mm thread bolts, they get the same torque. Kind of odd that Yamaha puts a zip tie to hold a hose on, but hey, their design, not mine. Just need to replicate this over on the other side. Next, let's get on the cooling water passage, and make sure you put on the gasket where this black section is facing into the block. See how that looks different? You want the non-black surface to be against this outer cover, and then this black adhesive side going into the block. Oh, look at that, they even give you the torque, 11.8 Newton meters, or 8.7 foot-pounds. Let's run them down, and then we'll torque them. All right, number one. All right, let's go ahead and get our drive gear for the timing belt. And these guys will not take a whole lot of torque. I believe it's 7 Newton meters or 5 foot-pounds, so be careful with them. Well, we've got the bottom end knocked out. Let's take a look at what we're going to need to complete the head installation. The machine shop has resurfaced the heads, and here's what we found after we got them cleaned up. These are too far gone. There is no way we can take them down any further to try to get rid of all the corrosion damage that's done around the water jackets area and then working its way back into the combustion chamber. So what do? Well, you don't just buy heads and then transfer all your old stuff over. It is not financially prudent to do so. So what do? Well, Yamaha offers complete head assemblies. And when I say complete, I mean they are ready to bolt on. You get the entire head assembly ready to bolt on along with all the required gaskets and seals. And that's the direction we are going to head. These, they're going to get thrown in the trash can or taken to the recycler because that's all they are worth, is just scrap at this point. Now, I've got everything laid out on the table in the right orientation to where it's going to make a smooth transition over to the engine block itself. What we have to do first is remove the tensioner and then the cam. So when I do that, I'm going to lay them here in the correct orientation and the correct order. At that point, we can bring the head over, get it torqued down, and then reinstall the camshafts and the chain and the tensioner. Pretty simple, huh? Now the tensioners actually already have a little holder that's keeping the tension off, so they're easier to remove. Just this little pin right here. Now when you're removing the camshaft caps, you actually want to do it in particular order. Going 1 through 4, you want 1, 2, 3, and then you end up with number 4. Once we get those removed, we'll transfer it to the towel, and then it'll make the last jump over to the head. All we need to do next is just move the camshafts over to here temporarily until we get them bolted back in. And you'll notice there's two links that are actually in gold. Those are the timing marks showing the relationship in between the intake and exhaust cams, because there's also a mark on the cam gear itself. So if for some reason that got moved, you just need to make sure that those links end up in the same orientation that they are right now. The sequence on this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, and back to 5. But before we do that, let's go ahead and get our tensioner out of the way. There we go. Now let's go. We've got everything laid out. We've got our gaskets, new seals. I think they call this a water shut grommet. Let's start laying in the different pieces, bring over the head, then get it torqued. We'll go ahead and put this little grommet in first, and they actually go down here just like that. So we'll go ahead and do the other one since we're thinking about it, because I would not want to leave this out. Now hopefully you kept up with your dowels, because even with the new heads, they don't send out new dowels. So we pull those out of the old one, get those in place, and give them a light tap to make sure they're bottomed out. We'll go ahead and do the opposite side as well. Next, we need to verify that we've got our crank in the correct position, and we do. Our arrows are lined up over here. Now let's get some contact cleaner and do one last wipe of our surface area here, because we want that to be completely clean so it gets a good seal. Lay our gasket in. Now we can bring the head over. These edges are extremely sharp, so make sure you've got a good hold on it. Otherwise it will fillet your finger open. Now each one of these bolts, put a little bit of oil just on the tip before you pop them in. I'm not doing these in sequence at the moment, just getting them bottomed out. There will be a tightening sequence, and it's actually in 3 stages. But there's a certain order you need to do that to, and I will show you that in a few minutes. All right, the sequence I've already marked on the head, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you're actually going to do this in 3 stages. The first time around, we're going to take it to 14 foot-pounds. The second time around, we will take it to 27 foot-pounds. And the last time, we'll change the settings on our torque wrench, and we'll take each one an additional 90 degrees. Now we got 3 bolts on the end, and it's a 2-stage tighten. We're going to take it to 10 foot-pounds the first time, and then 20 the second time around. Now next, I want to put a little assembly lube on each one of the valve tappets, or the buckets, depending on what you want to call it, and then on the cam surfaces as well. So let's go ahead and bring over our cams. Verify that our gold links are still where they're supposed to be, and they are, so we're looking good. Now let's start bringing over our caps. Makes it so much easier when you keep everything lined up on the table. Let's put a little bit of oil inside this seal. Lift up. So here's our sequence. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, and then finish here at 4. Now we're going to do this in 2 steps. The first time around, it's going to be 5.8 foot-pounds. The second time around, it's going to be 12 foot-pounds. All right. Next, let's get our tensioner in place. Now we just need to take those two to 8.7 foot-pounds. There she is. Last but not least, let's go ahead and pull this retaining pin, and we're good to go. So what we're going to do next, just rotate it over a little bit, and we've got the exact same procedure we need to do for the other bank. So let's keep going. Make sure our surface is clean. Lay down our gasket. Put this head in place. Do it again, like I said, same procedures we just did. And I have the sequence marked. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we finish out 9, 10, 11 on those M8 bolts on the very end of the engine. And you're actually going to do this in 3 stages. The first time around, we're going to take it to 14 foot-pounds. The second time around, we will take it to 27 foot-pounds. And the last time, we'll change the settings on our torque wrench, and we'll take each one an additional 90 degrees. 10, first time around, then 20. Same game as before. First round going to be 5.8 foot-pounds. Second time around going to be 12. And we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's get our chain tensioner in place. So yeah, she actually slides in there like that. Take those to 8.7. 2, 4, 7. Now, let's pull out that retaining pin. She's good to go. What we're going to do next is wipe this area down, grab our covers, make sure they're clean, and then get it closed up. So we've got our valve cover ready to go. We do need to put a little bit of Yamaha bond on these points right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we can lay it in place. Hopefully everybody stays in there. Now Yamaha actually wants you to use a little bit of blue Loctite on each one of these bolts. One side down, the other one to go. Well, it's finally starting to come together. Let's look at all the electrical equipment we're going to need to get reinstalled on this engine. Well, as you can tell from the table, we're reinstalling most of the equipment that came off the motor to begin with, except for this. We're going to put on a new timing belt. So we're going to start this process by actually going backwards for a moment. The first step is we need to go ahead and get our camshaft gears mounted, and to do that we need to hold the camshaft still because they take right at 49 foot-pounds of torque, and of course we can't do that with the engine sitting like it is, and I don't want to put that kind of stress on the timing belt when I put it on. So what we're going to do is remove these covers. At that point you're going to see on the camshaft there's an actual area where you can put a wrench to hold it still. Let me get these popped off real quick and then we'll get those timing gears put on. Let's start by tapping in our dowel. Since we're at it, we'll go ahead and get both of them. So you actually have a 23 millimeter going down to your camshaft, and then the top bolt is a 13 millimeter, and we're going to take this to 43 foot-pounds. Now, Yamaha actually wants you to replace these gaskets every time you pull it off. I think that's a little bit excessive. They're brand new. I'm just going to add one little small dab of Yamaha Bond back in these four corners and pop it right back on there. I'm going to use this to run it down, but this is not what I'm going to use to set the torque. I just want to get them in there easily. Then we'll get them torqued. Now what they want you to do here is go around and tighten them to 5.8 and then go back around because there's so much gasket material or rubber material to compress down, it won't be even the first time around. The second time around we'll even everything up. Now one more time. Let's bring it around, do the same thing to this one. All right, 43 coming up. One more time. Next, let's go ahead and get our throttle linkages in place. All right, this one is in the correct position. That little mark right here is lined up with this point. The one here, we need to rotate clockwise to where it's in position, and I'm just a little bit off on the crank. I mean, just a hair. So we're going to start by temporarily putting on the flywheel. See if we can just bump that over. That's it. Now let's bring over this bank. That's it. Now let's get our belt on. Even amount of tension, it'll start to compress. Just takes a little while. Don't expect it just to fly right over. There we go. Now we're getting ready to put on the mount for our stator. And if you're putting on a new block like I am, you need to transfer your dowels over. Otherwise, they are not going to play well together. Next, let's get on the stator. And I prefer to use a little bit of Loctite on these bolts, but not the red. We're just going to go with the blue. Now, let's get in our Woodruff key and put it on our flywheel. So we're getting ready to torque this to 174 foot-pounds, and you want to put a little bit of oil on your threads. Now I'm going to be using a special tool that's actually going to hold it here and here with a long handle. Now, if you don't have one of these, I mean, we can certainly sell you one. But if I were you, I would probably get me a couple of flat pieces of, I don't know, 1/4-inch steel, maybe a 1/2 inch wide, weld it together in a Y, and then put in 2 bolts to go into that location to hold it still. You're going to need to get out to here because 174, that's a lot. Now, with that done, just to make sure that we're correct on our timing, let's go ahead and spin the engine around once and make sure everything clears. Now, the spark plugs are actually already mounted, so it'll have a fair amount of pressure we have to overcome, but let's take it around once. Get my marks exactly where they were before. Now, before we go any further, let's go ahead and put our pointer back on and get it pointed to top dead center. Next, let's bring in our arm for the throttle plates. Now, don't tighten these bottom ones down until we get this upper section, because that's the critical point, because we don't want it to bind. So just do these hand tight where we can still shift it around. Plus, this has a little arrow on the outside. Make sure, well, of course, it's going to be pointing up, but you want it on the outside, not hidden on the inside. Now, let's get these tightened down. All right, and since we're here, now let's get in this ground strap that goes from one head to the other. Next, let's go ahead and get our temperature sensors in place, and then we're going to lay over the harness, start getting it bolted down and hook it up. I'm not sure why Yamaha redesigned these, because they actually mount in the same way. All right, with those in place, let's go ahead and get our voltage regulator rectifier that actually resides behind the harness. And its ground goes here, and then the harness ground actually has 2 points here and here. Let's get our ground in. So with that in place, let's go ahead and bring over our main harness and then start laying it in. We'll start by just getting in these top bolts and leave them loose, and then we'll go down, put in the rest, and then install the ones up top for the trough. When you're doing this, make sure you've got these wires pulled through and just lay it into place here. Like that. So that's bolts down here at the bottom, here, 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 and then we'll have 3 more up there at the top. The bolts that hold this section have an extra washer right there, and they're this length. The ones up top are just a little bit longer with a single washer. Let's do our 2 grounds that come off the main harness. One of them goes right here, and the second one goes through here right to this point. Next, there's a bracket that lays in like this. Those are going to go there. I guess we can go ahead and connect these. There. Go ahead and zip tie those in. Back up. There we go. A couple little channels that they actually seat into. All right, at this point, let's go ahead and get the starter up there. And we want to hold this a little bit in as we bring it in, because we want it to route just behind it. I missed a ground. This one right here needs to go behind that. So let's back this off for a second. And there should be enough leeway for me to get it in there. Now let's get that back in place. Need to bring that wire off of the starter down to this point. Just plug and play right here. 2 bullet connectors. Now let's go ahead and get the coil packs bolted back down. All right, we've got a ground wire up in place. Don't forget about it. Now, let's drop in our coil triggers. And since we're here, I'm just checking over my coil wires, making sure they're not cracked anywhere on the boots. They still look okay. When you're pushing these on, you can feel them when they actually clip in. Then you know you've pushed it far enough. Push them straight so they'll actually engage like that. What we're doing here is just retaping some of the wires where oil and gas has gotten in there and caused it to release. When you're doing this, make sure you use some good tape to do it. The 3M brand is probably the best out there, and it'll hold on the longest. Tough stuff. We are really starting to get close on this project. Let's take a dive into the fuel system and what it's going to take to clean it up and get it put back together. This machine has been setting up for a long time, obviously, if you've been watching any of these videos, and I feel confident that the inside of this VST tank is going to be a mess. But we haven't opened it up yet, so I have no idea what parts are going to be required. I can tell you it's only going to take basic tools to get this done. So let's get these throttle bodies out of the way. I'll open up that VST tank. I cannot wait to see what's going on inside of it. Now, if you don't own one of these, I suggest you get one because it's the only tool I know of that can actually have a chance of pulling these out. Little shock to the system and they'll come right out most of the time. I am pleasantly surprised so far. It's not as bad as I was expecting. So it's not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be in there. What we're going to do is get some contact cleaner, carburetor cleaner, and then start cleaning it out, inspecting all the O-rings, look at the hoses, see if any of them are cracked or need to be replaced. And then we can put it back together and actually get it on the machine and maybe test it. So let's get started. So as I said, everything's looking pretty good in here so far, but looks can be deceiving. We're going to pull down each component and see if we can do a bench test. I just want to put a little bit of power to it, see if the motor actually turns, which I kind of expect it to. Now when you're doing this, we are messing with something that was just immersed in gasoline. So the slightest little spark has the potential to start a fire. So you need to be very aware of that when you're making connections if you choose to do a bench test of the individual pumps. Just want to make that clear. Things can go south in a big hurry. I want to take a quick peek at our high pressure pump. For the most part it's empty of fuel, but it'll be pulling in from this side and pushing it out that way. So we want to make sure that's actually facing away from us. And it's actually marked up top as to which one's positive and negative. Let's see what we've got. Yep. It appears that this pump is still functional, so we're going to try to use it. What we are going to do is replace the pickup, which has a filter built into it, as well as the input, which goes into this plate, also has like a rubber collar. But over time, that rubber will break down and almost turn into a jelly and then stop up the whole system. So we're in here, now is the best time to go and replace all these different seals, filters, as well as O-rings. So let's keep going. Let's dump it out and see if there's any, just old gas. Kind of had a yellow tinge to it. But honestly, that's really as clean as you get. The hoses still feel okay. I don't see any splitting on them. They are getting a little bit stiff. I'm not super wild about the clamps showing some rust because that's not going to improve over time. I think what we're going to do here is go ahead and pull the hoses off, and I am going to end up replacing those. Because when it comes to your fuel system, a small leak starts a fire, and I don't want to be that guy. When you're dealing with older hoses like this, if you just grab it from the side and just squeeze it, twist it a little bit just to get it broken loose, that'll make it easier to get it pulled off. Okay, let's go ahead and test our low pressure pump with it still attached to the bracket so it doesn't try to jump on us. All right. Color coded, red and black, making it easy for me. Let's see what she's got. That isn't sounding super healthy. Tell you what, just for fun, we're going to open up a new one and take a listen to it, because that doesn't sound right to me. Let's see what a new one sounds like. So yes, they sound a whole lot different. So guess which one's going to go on the engine? It's going to be this one. If yours sounded like that other one, you probably need to order one of these as well. Now we're definitely going to go ahead and replace the low pressure or the lift pump, and then we'll go ahead and reinstall our existing high pressure pump along with the new filter and the new seals. We're just transferring over these little rubber dampeners. Then clamp it back down. Pop it back in here so we're not chasing it around the table. Yeah, I think this one's been in here since day one. Look, it was broken right here. So that was a leak waiting to happen. Got a little bit of corrosion on the inside of this little ridge or channel. So let's get it scraped out, and then I'm going to spray out the whole thing, because everything I'm scraping out, some of it's going into the tank, and it doesn't need to be there. Much better. Our pump has a filter on the bottom of it, which is this, and then up top it has a rubber grommet that goes into the housing that is the top of the VST tank. So we're going to replace both of those. Yeah, huge difference. This is like a brick compared to the new one. And we need to spray that out a little bit. Yeah, it's like a brick compared to the new one. Done, done, done. It's like, it may look all right from the outside, but once you actually pull it apart and get to actually feel it, you can tell that it was time to do this. Now, if you know that you're going to replace a hose and it just will not release, take a knife and just slit it down the side where it actually intersects on the brass. Don't push so hard that you actually scar the brass, but now it should release. Yeah, that hose had it. Right, that needle, little needle valve, which is attached to this float, it looks to be in good shape, but I still want to pop it out and look at the actual tip of it to make sure it's not pitted anywhere. So let's do that. That looks good, stainless. It's kind of cool that Yamaha actually has this needle seat where you can remove it if it was damaged, but it actually looks good. And our needle in this one has a rubber end. What you want to feel for is to make sure it's not split. So you hold it like this and just kind of push the tip at 90 degrees to make sure it doesn't open up anywhere. This one looks good to go. So let's slide it back in its channel. Make sure you put your pin back in the same direction it came out. And then the same orientation. I think it was about right there. You can't tap this very hard. You run the risk of snapping this edge. This has a fair amount of scale and gunk down inside. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and pull that apart, because if I keep messing around, I'm going to end up bending that tab, and then that float's not going to be where it's supposed to be. So let's take that back off. There, we're going to see if we can balance it on this little oil pan. And we're going to fill that little cavity with some carburetor cleaner / dip. Let it sit, do its job. That should break it free. Let that set for a while, then we'll come back, see if we can get it cleaned up. And welcome back. It's actually been sitting for a day or so, and it seems that the carb dip has done its job and gotten this reasonably cleaned up. So now I think we can actually just spray it down with some contact cleaner and get it put back together. Much better. Still not perfect, but much better. All I'm doing now is just cleaning up the surface where this O-ring is going to go on this top half. Just had a little bit of a corrosion from the previous one. I want to get that all scraped off, make sure it's smooth. That way it will seal up properly. While I was ordering parts, I did decide to go ahead and replace the float needle in its seat, since it is replaceable on this. I mean, the one I took off looked good, but it's cheap insurance. We're going this far on the engine, why not go ahead and do it? That way we're 100% sure that this is not going to leak when we put it back together. So our new pieces, we'll lay that out to the side for a moment, get the seat in. And then it just has this little bracket that has to go back and hold it in place. I'll put in this new, I guess you call it a grommet. Make sure it's all the way down flush. Getting our needle in place. Now we can get our pin back in. Looks like it. Let's bring it in to seat it. That should do. Now we can plug in our pump, which we're going to reuse the original one. Get that output pressed in. Looks like it. All right, so it's good to go. Let's go ahead and get our new O-ring on. Make sure it's seated in the groove all the way around, because we don't want it to ride up and then get pinched when we put the top half on. I think that's got it. Now let's lower it in. We've got our tank back together. Now it's time to take a look at all these hoses and determine if I'm going to replace them or reuse them. What I'm looking for is to make sure it's still pliable and doesn't have any cracks on the ends. So the hoses for the most part look okay, but I'm not really excited about these clamps. They are pretty rusty and I think they're going to be failing soon. So we're going to go ahead and replace those. Now these on the end, these smaller ones, when they're split, or I had to cut them to get them off, what you can do is just cut back and then reuse them. You can probably get away with doing that once or twice, but then after that, it's going to be a little too short and you'll have to replace them. But I think for the most part, we can reuse most of these. So let's start replacing clamps and then look at the photos and get everything put back the way it was. This whole setup is made up of like 3 different style clamps. You've got some that are compression, you've got some that are actually almost like spring tension, and there's 3 different sizes of those. So my advice is do them one at a time. That way you won't get lost as to what goes where. All right, definitely going to need this special tool to crimp that. Love the way these work, so clean, cool. Neat how they send them out, they're already compressed. You just pull that retaining clip and on they go. Much better. Well, it looks like we have all this plumbing back together. So let's go ahead and get this assembly mounted back to the engine. These are our 4 bolts that we need to get to. And while we're here, there's a water inlet on the top of this cooler that we should go ahead and take care of now, because it's going to be almost impossible to get to once I get this in place. That gets routed up through here. You plug in there. Here. We've got our VST tank mounted up. We've got most of the plumbing done, most of the electrical, but now we need to take a look at the throttle bodies. More importantly, we need to look at the injectors, because if they match the rest of this engine, and they probably will, they're going to need to be looked at to make sure the seals are good, and then see if they, well, are still flowing correctly or not. So let's grab those, head over to the teardown bench, and pull them apart. For the most part, the hoses still feel okay. Just a bit gritty, but what I'm concerned with are the seals on the injectors themselves. So what I want to do is go ahead and pull the fuel rails, get those injectors out, and then reassess. I mean, at the very least, I think we need to replace the seals, especially the ones going up to the fuel rail, and go from there. Let's see if she'll pull off now. There we go. Yeah, they're kind of hard. They're supposed to be really pliable. So we've got the first 3 injectors pulled out. It doesn't look too bad, but I do want to get this cleaned up. But to clean the injectors, I'm going to need a special tool to do so. The one I'm going to use is actually made by Motion Pro. And what this uses is just a 9-volt trigger source associated with some carburetor cleaner. It triggers the actual injector, and then you can flush the carburetor cleaner straight through the injector. So let me get this set up on one of them and I'll show you how it works. Just a little bit of silicone spray to make it easier for that to go in there. Yeah, I think this will work. When you're tightening this down, you don't have to really put a lot of torque on it. You're just basically holding the injector still. That's all that needs to be accomplished. Plug this in and get my fishbowl over here so you can see what happens. The trick when you're doing this is not to hold the injector open for long. You just want to do small pulses and you want to have those synchronized. So I think these can be saved pretty easily. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and clean this last one, then pull the other three, clean all of those, then get these actual throttle bodies cleaned up a little bit. Then I'm going to order new O-rings and seals for the injectors. When they come in, then we'll put it all back together. I'm not really excited about that crack right here, so I'm going to go ahead and replace this one. The rest of them I'm going to reuse. So next on the agenda, I'm going to carry both of the throttle bodies and the intakes over to the parts washer, see if I can get them cleaned up a little bit, get those parts ordered, and then we can put it back together. Well, we have all our new seals and our one injector that we're actually going to replace. So with it all laid out on the table, let's start putting it back together. The first thing we're going to do is replace all of our O-rings and our seals on our existing injectors, and then we're going to get them installed into the fuel rail and get it bolted back together. Nothing all that technical about this, just remove the old O-rings and seals, pop on the new ones. When you're doing this, make sure there's no corrosion or any type of debris in between the injector and these little O-rings. All right, we're about to get our injectors installed into the fuel rail and the intakes. I want to use a little bit of silicone spray to make it easier for those O-rings to guide in. It takes a little bit of effort to get these in there. I think I'm going to use a glove the next time around. One more spray on the other O-rings, and then off we go. Get our spacers in. Just get it started. Let's use our bolts to go ahead and bring everything down. There we go. That's looking good. One bank down, one more to go. There you have it. Let's get the bench out of the way and get these bolted back up to the engine. I had to go get the dowels out of the previous head and transfer them over to here. So give me a second to get that done and we'll get everything mounted back up. So let's get her closed up. There she goes. Everybody's in there just hand tight. Let's go ahead and get these snugged down. Everything's tightened down. Let's go ahead and make our electrical connections. Gets a little tight with the injector connections. I believe that's our fuel pump. Get our fuel line. Next, let's get the throttle linkage in place. Let's get our fuel pump cable, and it goes to that little attachment point right here. Let's go and get the intake over on the opposite side. It's basically the same game as what we just did. There we go. Be careful there. I actually let the gasket slide over a little bit and get off that dowel, so don't make that same mistake. All right, this harness looks okay. I don't think we need to do any rewrapping on it. Go ahead and get our linkage over here before it gets covered up. Go ahead and reconnect our fuel lines, our cross connects rather. Slowly but surely, she's starting to fall together. All right, sometimes we end up having to take one step backwards to go forwards. This is one of those cases. When I installed the flywheel, I forgot to put this vent pipe, and it actually mounts on these two bolts and sits in there roughly like this and then goes to the intake plenum. So we're going to back up a little bit. We're going to take off the flywheel, get this mounted up, and then we'll continue. All right, with that bolt out of the way, we just need to put on a puller and get it removed. No big deal. There she goes. Now, we just need to remove these two bolts, get that vent line in place, then put it back together. Order of operations, very important sometimes. Now let's get it back on there. And keep in mind, the magnets are going to try to pull it in, so don't get your fingers under it, otherwise they'll get pinched. There we go. Now we're going to use our holder. Definitely going to extend it out all the way because we have to take this nut to 174 foot-pounds without throwing out my back. Woohoo! Fun stuff. Next, let's go ahead and get our intake silencer set up. The seals that they had, or well, you can look at them, they're cracking, falling apart. And we've gone this far, we're going to go ahead and make sure it's perfect. So let's get these off and get the new ones put on. So no great trick to these, just peel them off. We'll get the new ones put on and get these installed. So now that we've got our seals on, what we're going to do is put both of our silencers together, get these new zip ties put on, and then we'll put on both pair as an assembly. Makes it a lot easier than trying to do it after the fact and get these boots to line up. And trying to do all of that when it's already mounted, you really can't pull it off. So next, let's get a couple of zip ties, put those around the boots, and then we put the whole assembly on. Now to make these easier to get in, we're going to spray them down with a little bit of silicone. And just put it on as an assembly. So basically you only have 4 bolts or nuts holding it in place. 2 nuts up here and then a couple of bolts here and here. And once you get 1 or 2 of those started, it'll start to shimmy its way in. One up top, then one down low. Get this little crossover pipe in place. So we had 2 nuts up here, then 2 bolts here and here for this side, and we just had the same thing to do on the other. All right, now let's get our cover on and we will almost be through with this part anyway. All right, campers, this pretty much wraps up this build. What's going to happen next? Well, I need to address the corrosion issue with the exhaust before I can get the Powerhead remounted. Now, if you'd like to see that happen, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll be notified when we release the video. Until then, we just want to say thank you for shopping here with us at boats.net, and we will see you in the next video. Y'all have a great day.